Brothers, sisters, working class heroes, this is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Want to get your thoughts about the top stories of the week. Going to start right off with that. I want to hear it. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Yes, another week, another tragedy. I shouldn't say another week. These tragedies have been speeding up. What have we had? I saw a thing. What is this? The 16th shooting in 10 days. I mean, we're accelerating. I guess you can go, hey, but Rick, we're past the pandemic. I guess, is that the message? Is that the message here? This is the 27th school shooting this year in the country. We're going to exceed the record easily this year. And you look at the numbers. This is an American thing. We are exceptional here. NPR came out with a story today that I came across. There's a study out there that looked at 29 countries, kind of like the U.S., the advanced economic countries, and we're number one. We accounted for almost 97% of the firearm deaths among children 4 and younger. 92% of the firearm deaths in the age brackets of 5 to 14. So, yeah, I guess we're okay with that. And it's because, we've got so many guns. Again, we're number one at that too. We love to put up our finger and say we're number one. Here come a couple of things we are number one at. Now, Ted Cruz, he thinks we're exceptional for a whole bunch of other reasons, but we'll get to that. But I want your thoughts today, because this is one of those days where I'm hoping that this isn't going to be another one of those moments where you have another horrible tragedy, and we've had way too many of them. You have this media feeding frenzy where it's all we're talking about, and it's all we're being focused on, and every angle of it's being dissected, and every angle of it's being blamed, and then we have thoughts and prayers. Lots of thoughts and prayers, and we've had that already. Thoughts and prayers are out there. Then there's the blame. We're going through that right now, pointing fingers everywhere except where it belongs. And then we have the politicians going, hey, we got to do something. We have the debate on what should we do? We got to do something. And the people say, no, we can't do anything. And then we do nothing, because nothing ever gets done. And then it kind of dies down. We forget about it until the next time. And this wheel just keeps spinning around and round. In fact, 119 times since 2018, there have been 119 mass shootings at schools. And you go, when do we stop? Well, I guess we don't. And as I said, this is now evidently guns are now the leading cause of death among young people in the U.S. Used to be car crashes. Now it's guns. We've made cars much safer and guns much more available. In fact, I would argue, and I've argued this before, that the NRA, they would put gun vending machines in schools if they could get away with it, but not. But here's the thing that's infuriating. Again, you've got these folks who, sorry, can't do anything. Sorry, there's nothing we can do. Sorry, there's nothing that can be do. The amendment. And all we keep hearing is the same tired frames. And what's frustrating to me is you look at the stories that came out. There are a lot of stories coming out of Uvalde, Texas right now. I guess they've changed their story. I've lost track, a dozen plus times at this point. Every time we turn around, there's a new story, a new timeline, a new something. We find that the police waited outside, waited for 40 minutes upwards of an hour, I'm told. Or so the reports, and while 19 children are being murdered and 2 teachers. And we keep hearing this frame. Good guy with a gun. We keep hearing this frame. What we need are, arm our teachers. Newt Gingrich came out with this. Newt came out and said, well, what we need to do, and this isn't new. This is, again, these are retread ideas from the last 119 shootings. What we need to do is we need to pay $500 a month to a teacher, arm them, give them the guns. Because there's going to be a hero, good guy with a gun in every classroom. Now remember, these are the same people who just days before were saying we can't trust teachers because they're groomers and pedophiles. They can't be trusted to pick out a library book. But we now can trust them to pack heat in the classroom. We're gonna let them go heavy into the classroom. But sorry, the reading list. You can't be trusted with the reading list. We're gonna give you a Glock. But sorry, the reading list, bit too dangerous, bit too deadly. But what this tells us is I think they've got Hollywood on the brain. As much as the right hates Hollywood, I think they've got Hollywood on the brain. And I've been thinking about this. They've got this hero complex. And what we've seen in all of these shootings is the people that are supposed to be our saviors, the police, generally are waiting outside. They're waiting for tactical units to come in and do. There's nobody rushing through the door. There are no Rambos. There are no John McClanes. We hear this hero frame, and man, we throw that word around way too much. Look, the vast majority of police officers are courageous people who are doing their job in difficult jobs. They're not heroes. I mean, we throw that around way too much. They're people doing a difficult job, and they're doing risk assessment. All of those people looked at this situation and go, there's somebody in there with a weapon much more powerful than the little 6-shooter that I've got, a weapon that's meant to murder, a weapon that's meant for war, and the risk assessment is I'm not walking through the door. And not to mention, and this is, again, the other part of this, that murderer with the AR-15, he used the safety protocols against the police. We have these procedures that he was trained as a child to lock down, to protect the students from the shooters, only he used it against the police. And you go, well, couldn't have seen that coming. But this frame that, we're going to have the good guy with the gun, the hero is going to race in and save the day. The teacher is going to take the pistol and take on somebody with a weapon of war and body armor, which anybody who's trained in this stuff will tell you. And I've asked people who have seen combat, is this possible? No. People with actual training, career police officers, can't and don't do this stuff. There's a reason not every person who's been in the military or seen combat, there's no reason not everyone gets a Congressional Medal of Honor. Heroes are rare. I know, we love to throw that word around, but they're rare. And like I said, look at all of these shootings. The police were there. And look, I'm not blaming them for not rushing in head first into a blaze of AR-15 fire. Police response was not good, was bad. Decisions were horribly made. And we find out, and this is the other part of this. We find out that the police chief who waited had active shooter training. And recently. So this is one of those things, well, bad decisions were made. No, you made decisions in the moment based on your safety. No one was running through that door. So this was mitigating risk for the policemen there as well. It should have never gotten to this. And we don't talk about that. And this isn't only this situation. I mean, we can go back to the shooting in Florida a couple of years ago, where there were policemen there too. And look, I'm not beating up on cops. It is a tough job. It is a dangerous job. I don't know many people who are going to go rushing headfirst into a blaze of gunfire with a death wish. I don't know many of those people. And if that's the job description, I don't know many people who are going to sign up for it. And we shouldn't want that. We should be pushing for good policy. We don't need heroes. We need good policy. This isn't a right-left issue. To me, this shouldn't even be political. This isn't even a guns, no guns issue. This is a sanity issue. You know, back when we had the assault weapons ban, that little brief window of time, once we let that expire, the number of mass shooting deaths actually tripled. And you go, well, what more do we need? No, that's proof right there. No, see, causation doesn't necessarily, all that nonsense. Yeah, facts matter. And we have 400 million guns. Are we safer? There are guns. We are awash in guns. Are we any safer as a society? And I know, but Rick, the reason the schools are soft targets, it's a no gun zone. If we just armed the teachers. The only positive I see coming out of arming the teachers is maybe parents are a little more cordial. Maybe some of these radical, mouthy parents are going to be a little nicer. I don't see it stopping somebody walking in going to do horrible things. I do see more people throwing shots around as a potential for other students, more students to be killed, and also police taking out other people. No good scenario here. And what's interesting to me is we're still not talking about what the real issue is. The real issue being, the gun. And I know it's not the gun. It's not the gun's innocent here, completely innocent. And if you believe Ted Cruz, it's not even the gun, it's not even the people, it's the doors. Because Ted Cruz believes it's the door. We have a door problem. Yet the shooter was standing outside the door for over 12 minutes, from what I understand, shooting. That a problem too. We need sanity. We need to solve this problem, but we can't. And here's why we can't. Because the emails I've gotten from people who are going, but Rick, you can't stop bad people from doing bad things. It's true. You can't stop every scenario. You can't stop every bad thing from happening to everybody. It's true. I'll be the first to admit it. But you can mitigate some of it. You can limit the severity. You can try and be proactive. This idea that since we can't solve all of the problems, we don't solve any of them is ridiculous to me. In talking with people who are in law enforcement, when you ask the question, would you prefer going up against somebody with an AR-15 or somebody with a 9mm? Overwhelmingly, they go the 9mm. I may get hit with the 9mm. My vest will stop that 9mm shot. The 9mm may go through. It'll cause damage, but it's probably not going to kill me. You get hit with a round out of an AR-15. It's ripping through you. And you go, so what's the solution forward? Well, a lot of people are saying that what we need are universal background checks. We don't have them. And I have people go, but Rick, we do have background checks. And you go, it's true. We do have, performative kind of exercises that we do, that if you're going to buy a gun from a gun store, there are some background checks. It is kind of difficult. Some states are a little more difficult than others. But I have a friend who, he has told me that he has never filled out one of the ATF's Form 4473. That's the form to buy a gun. Because once you give that information to the government, there's a permanent record, he believes. And maybe there is. Now, evidently, we're not allowed to have any kind of gun registration, because that would be unconstitutional, because we can't register guns. But we can register cars and we can register everything else, but not guns. And he claims that he's bought his arsenal from garage sales, gun shows, friends, family, random people on the internet. That's how that's done. So when you say, but we've already got background checks. No, we don't have universal background checks. In fact, when I bought my shotgun, bought it from a guy in a parking lot. And it's perfectly legal to do in the state of Pennsylvania. No fingerprints, no background check, no accountability. And that, for him, is this idea that, the government's coming and we're going to take on the government. This is his mindset. And this is where responsible, law-abiding gun owners should be demanding sane regulation. Because like my friend who's a crackpot, I'll be honest, people against sane, rational, thoughtful regulation, which is in the whole amendment thing, well-regulated militia. People against it, these conspiracy crackpots who think that they're going to water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants, forgetting the rest of the sentence, and patriots, because they do that. They read half the sentence. They think they're going to take down the government, but yet don't seem to have a problem registering other things, yet they love to use the analogies. They love to use the analogy of, cars kill people, and now we find out, as I said earlier, that guns are killing more young people than cars. But you don't seem to mind getting a license to drive a car. You don't seem to mind being tested that you're proficient to drive a car, that your car is inspected, that it works properly, that you get insurance. There doesn't seem to be a lot of pushback to that stuff. Yet, having a deadly weapon, in a lot of states, you don't even need to know how to load the damn thing, and you can carry it around. I feel unsafe with people like that. Because I know a lot of people I look at and go, I'm sorry, I don't think you should be carrying a gun. Because you don't know where the safety is. So I think there should be some component of training, of proficiency, of insurance, of ultimately accountability. But that's not where we are as a country, because we've got the NRA, the No Responsibility Association. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Too radical? Or are we just going to continue to put up with, the cost of freedom, bunch of dead kids every once in a while? Is that the cost of freedom? Is that what the founding fathers would have signed on for? Is that what they wrote the Second Amendment for? Or was it, we want to make sure that we keep tyrannical government and other countries from invading? Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1943. That was the day 50,000 striking rubber workers ended their 5-day walkout in Akron, Ohio.
It was World War II, and the no-strike pledge was in full effect. Bosses were awash in defense contract profits. At the same time, they used the no-strike pledge to violate collective bargaining agreements, crank up assembly line production, and ignore grievances. As one sympathetic headline read, workers forced to strike in defense of their living standards, slashed by soaring prices, taxes, and anti-union profiteers. Workers at Goodyear, Firestone, and Goodrich had petitioned the War Labor Board for an 8-cent raise and shift differentials that they were entitled to per the Little Steel formula. For a year, they waited patiently and were outraged when they learned the board had only granted a 3-cent raise. Firestone and Goodrich workers threw down their tools immediately and poured out of the factories. Goodyear workers soon followed. In a protest telegram to the board, United Rubber Workers leaders pointed out that living costs had increased by 23% since January 1941. They also noted that essential to maintaining the no-strike agreement was a just settlement of grievances and a $25,000 cap on executive salaries, neither of which had been adhered to. The walkout was one of the first major challenges to the no-strike pledge. Women took the lead as picket captains and dispatchers. Their leadership was accepted without question. Flying pickets cruised the city to enforce picket lines. Black workers at Firestone, impressed by the union's fight for equal rights, figured prominently in the strike. Workers returned to the job with their spirits high, having forced the board to reconsider their demands.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Remember, check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Also, become a WBAI buddy by going to WBAI.org and signing up for the buddy program. Say, hey, you know what? I like the Rick Smith Show. I want to make sure the station stays on the air. I want to make sure that we make WBAI strong for the future so that we can continue to have radio for the people. Go to WBAI.org and sign up today. If you've got a thought, I want to hear it, especially on this. This is an important issue. I mean, are we okay with the fact that, over the last couple of years, I mean, we're talking 4 years, 119 mass school shootings. This is now the new, when I was a kid, it was dive under the desks because the Russians could be bombing us into oblivion. Mutual assured destruction. That was the heart of the Cold War. That was our concern. The bombs could fly. And, realistically, the chances of that happening, we knew were very, very small. My kids, they understand the chances of some nut coming in and shooting up their school, one of their peers, not out of the realm of possibility. And especially, in an area where I live, where the gun culture is, people have access to them. Because, like I said, a number of times, I've been fairly fortunate that I grew up in an area where if you saw somebody with a gun, somebody was probably going to die. I grew up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland. Guns were used for murder. They were used for crime. I now live in a neighborhood where it's a different gun culture. There's a free gun range not far from my house. The culture is, hunting. It's now a tool for other things, sportsmen, hunting and target shooting and that kind of thing. So I kind of understand there's a difference. And I understand the mindset of law-abiding gun owner, family tradition stuff. I get that. And look, they are fun. It's fun to shoot things. It is. It's fun to target shoot. It's fun to especially some of the high-powered stuff, things that shoot a lot of things. Fun. But deadly. In the wrong hands, in the hands of somebody having, a day, deadly. And should your right to, hey, it's just my fun, should your right be able to infringe on mine or others? So Ted Cruz was being interviewed by the folks at Sky News. And this is where European journalists or journalists outside of the U.S. who ask actual questions are pretty to the point. And this Sky News reporter says, hey, a violent psychopath who's able to get a weapon so easily, an 18-year-old with 2 AR-15s, but why does this only happen in your country? He says, I really think that's what many people around the world cannot fathom. Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism so awful? And Ted Cruz almost is losing his mind. He tries to walk away, and he goes, how does he put it? He goes, you got your political agenda, God love you, and he tries to storm away, and he goes, no, Senator, wait, I want to understand why you don't think that it's a gun problem. And the same woman chimes in and says, hey, why is this just an American problem? And Cruz just stops and goes, why is it that people come from all over the world to America? It's because it's the most free, it's the freest, most prosperous, safest country on earth. Stop being a propagandist. And you go, wait a second, who's the propagandist here? Ted, we're not the freest, we're not the most prosperous, and we're certainly not the safest. This is the kind of jingoism that we allow our politicians to get away with. And he was able to storm off and have his little hissy fit. Now you go, but oh my God, Rick, you just said that we're not the freest, most prosperous, safest country on earth. How dare you? That's heresy. We're number one in all those things because we're number one in everything. Yeah, when it comes to dead children, we are number one. When it comes to guns, we're number one. When it comes to incarcerating our citizens, absolutely, we're number one. And if you've watched I think it was called Newsroom with Jeff Daniels a number of years back, where he does that clip that's all over the internet. While we're not the greatest country on earth, but we should be, he's not wrong. We're number one in a lot of the wrong categories. Number of people who believe in angels. I got a problem with that. But we're not the freest, most prosperous, safest country on earth, but we should be. And this is where policy then comes into all of this. This is where doing something. Now, do I put any solace or any hope in Joe Manchin saying it feels different right now and that he hopes that 70 or 80 senators will vote for some kind of gun reform? No, because he said probably the exact same thing back in 2018. It's like deja vu all over again. That's my problem. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Mayat on line one. Mayat, how are you today?
Is that me, Brother Rick?
That is you. How are you today? What's on your mind?
Very well, and kudos to Carol, who always gives us an upbeat, positive response. I have a couple thoughts, and it's somewhat in disagreeing with you, although
please do.
Yes. Okay. So this recent development, where they literally sought out the janitor to give them a master key to enter the classroom being shot up.
They breached the door. Yes.
Yeah. Now, there's something wrong with that picture because, and I also heard reports that the parents who wanted to take charge themselves at that point were tackled, were tasered. One woman was handcuffed. So my wonderment, Rick, is whether this relates to Stephen, and it's spelled Stephen Marche, Marche, his book as a journalist called The Next Civil War, Dispatches from America's Future. And when I heard an interview with him sometime, I guess last year, as the book came out, I think it was with Leonard Lopez at BAI, but I remember at the end of the interview, he was asked after, reporting all these experts and military who said there's a 67% chance of this civil war happening, and he was asked, well, what would be a way to remediate this? And his response took your jaw to the floor, because he said, unless, and these are from the experts, he said, unless you go to your police departments, there are 1,800 of them, and your military, and root out the white supremacists, that would be one of the most important things you can do. So my question is, or concern is these people knew exactly what they were supposed to do in an active shooter situation, and they had no plan, and at the same time, when it's a Breonna Taylor where they're at the wrong apartment, or the guy up in White Plains who had been part of the community as a correction officer, I'm blanking on his name, but when his Medi alert went down and didn't work, the police wanted to come in and shoot him, no questions asked, and that's what he did. And then this recent case in Minneapolis, where they had the wrong party, someone visiting someone, sleeping on the couch, so they never asked questions before that dirty work. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is we need to pull back from this idea about a certain culture that exists in police and on the ground by Esther, I have her first name in hand, that I think it was yesterday. She brought on Waisley, who is a city councilman in Minneapolis, and the story she told after nothing, and Congress replicates that in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, where a public safety reconfiguration didn't go through, and she just continues to say, devastating situation in terms of a culture of racism and devastation toward the black community. So I think we need to think a little bit deeper in terms of why they had a response and then turned on the parents who wanted to do their role. It's much deeper. And I will be following up with you with a email, because I have a suggestion or two about an author you might bring on, but it's called The Next Civil War by Stephen Marsh, and it'll have your jaw to the floor. And thank you so much. I look forward to the other beloved callers. I enjoy so much. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks so much. No, one of the first questions that came up, is, how many, and to your point, is, anybody checking their social media for any replacement theory writings, any CRT writings, and this is now the culture that we're in. And to your point, I've had for a very long time, probably 10 years now, at least, questioning the training our police officers get. We've now trained our police to be military. We've armed them with military armaments. They now have tanks. I was pulled over a couple of years ago, and out for minor traffic. I forget what. I think it was an inspection. Was out of date, and 3 police officers that looked like they fell out of a war zone, surrounding my car, and you're going, this isn't normal. And part of this, I do believe, is couplefold. The prevalence of guns. These are people who want to protect themselves. They're trained that there are so many guns on the streets right now that at any minute, they're not going to go home. And look, I understand that to a degree. I understand that it's an incredibly dangerous job, and that at any minute, their lives can be taken. So I completely understand. Cover your behind. Get that. But what you never see anymore? When I was a kid, when someone got arrested, you put your hands on the car, spread your legs, they put your hand behind your back, put the other hand behind your back, and then they help you into the squad car. You don't see that anymore. How do you see people get arrested? They slam them to the ground, their knee in the back. They completely subdued because that's how they're trained. And I argue it's the training that we've done for our police officers to train them in this military mentality that we have. Now look, we're not supposed to have deployed military on our soil, but I would argue every community across this country's got a little military running around, enforcing traffic laws, which when you have that kind of mentality, it ramps up that kind of danger. And we're in interesting times. We most certainly are. But on the other side, I want to get your thoughts. Do you think any of this changes? Joe Manchin, like I said, he says right now, he's got hope. 70 or 80 senators are going to come along and vote for gun reform legislation because this time it's different. The 119th time, this time's different. For me, it seems like deja vu all over again, to quote Yogi Berra. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show.
United we bargain. Divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. Can you imagine if the earth beneath your hometown caught fire and kept on burning for more than half a century? That is what happened in Centralia, Pennsylvania. And on this day in labor history, the year was 1962. Centralia was a mining town with 2,700 residents built above a rich vein of anthracite coal. It's not entirely certain what started the fire. The town had used an abandoned mine as a landfill. Each spring, they would burn the trash collected during the year. It's thought that the trash burning was not fully extinguished and spread to the mine. Once they realized the extent of the problem, town and state officials tried to stop the fire, but they could not. In 1979, the owner of a gas station in town checked his underground tanks. He found the gasoline had heated up to 172 degrees Fahrenheit. By the early 1980s, sinkholes began to open up around the town. One 12-year-old boy almost perished in one of the sinkholes. 7th grader Tom Dombowski was crossing his neighbor's yard when the earth beneath him opened up. He fell 8 feet. Todd was rescued by his cousin before he plummeted further into the 150-foot hole. In 1984, the government began relocating town members to other locations. 8 residents fought the relocation and won permission to stay on the burning landscape until they passed away. Today, Centralia burns underground and is but a pile of rubble and abandoned houses on the surface. The asphalt of the town's roads have deep gashes and white smoke rising from the cracks. It's estimated the former mining town may continue to burn for another 2 centuries.
Refuse to leave a place they found.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Sweet home for walls of memories.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, as I said, I don't see much changing. I know Mitch McConnell has said that he's given permission to talk about getting something done, but, we've gone through this a number of times. I don't see anything. Maybe Joe Manchin's right. Maybe this time is different. Let's go to the phones. Got Al from New Jersey, a retired New York policeman. Al, what's on your mind?
Yeah, hi there, Rick. So I just want to make 2 points. One, as a retired NYPD, I responded to 9/11 and the whole thing like that, and
yep.
and we exercised a brand of policing where we rushed into it and we tried to do the best we could under the circumstances. But what we're seeing in this Parkland, Florida shooting and this Texas incident is bald-faced cowardice. That's the only way I can describe it, and that's what you have there. People like me who are, in the profession or retired from the profession are ashamed and embarrassed on what we saw there. And, there's no excusing it. There's no use of language that can, pretty it up. The second point is that most cops that I know, anyway, and I know a lot of them, are Republicans, and we're not against reasonable restrictions on gun ownership. So I don't like when people try to frame this as a Republican.
I don't think I've done that, have I?
No, not you, but in the general media, atmosphere that goes on, this is not true. Most cops I know are for reasonable restrictions on gun ownership, and that does not violate the Second Amendment.
Now, my gun friends say it's a slippery slope, Al. The second you start talking about training, mandating any training or mandating any kind of background checks, because I had someone yesterday, say, we've already got background checks and they don't work. And I go, yeah, because there's so many loopholes, you can drive a truck through them, because as another friend of mine does, he doesn't buy from gun stores, he buys from garage sales and from people on the internet, which you don't need to get checks for. So I'm glad to hear that, because, I'm hoping there are 70 or 80 senators who are going to do something on a common sense level, because look, these shootings, this is getting too frequent, and I think it's harming our country. It's harming us globally, but it's harming us, nationally as well, I think.
Yeah, well, this is an argument. The slippery slope thing. I think that people who state that really, I have to question what is their attraction to guns in the first place. I own 3 guns. I'm licensed to carry in 50 states. Do I walk out of my house every day with a gun strapped to me? I don't. If I'm going to ride the New York City subway that day, well, that's a different story. But, for me going down to the grocery store and stuff like that, I don't have a love affair with my firearms where, I constantly feel under threat. Here's the other side of the coin, though, and I don't hear this talked about. The same people who want, restrictions and this and that on guns, and, mentally ill people should not be getting these guns. They're the same ones who, allow our city streets to be littered with thousands of homeless who are really mentally ill people. And once you try to take any action against mentally ill, they will run to court and try to sue to stop it. So they've got, if you're going to attack this problem, and a lot of these people are doing these shootings, let's face it, they have mental issues. Well, then you're going to have to crack down on mentally ill people in this country, because they're running around, they're getting guns, but they're also all over our streets in the city. You can't have it both ways.
So, Al, what do you do with this? Because look, one of the frames that I'm getting from the right is, especially with this shooter in Texas, he comes from a broken home. He does, fatherless. The mother had problems, poverty, all this stuff. I don't see policy. I see lots of finger pointing. I see lots of blame. What's the policy going forward? Look, I'm a policy guy. What's the action we should be taking? So you're saying they're the homeless, and look, I don't want people being homeless. I want to help. What's the policy that you would pursue?
We have to go back to institutionalizing people. That's just a fact that people don't want to face up to it. It goes against their core beliefs, but we have to realize some people are irredeemable, whether they're mentally ill or their criminality is such. We got people in New York City. This guy that shot up the subway, he's got an extensive criminal record, but they never put these people away. And it's the same people who will argue for giving those people bail, okay, that will come down and say, well, we got to get rid of all guns. There's a conundrum. Yeah. They need to face that also. They have a dichotomy that they need to resolve.
Now, let me ask you one last question. As a New York a retired police officer, my premise has been that we've changed police training over the years. into a much more of a militaristic kind of fashion. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, and I saw it coming in at the end of my career. I didn't like it. Listen, policing is an art. It's the same way as a doctor. It's the art of medicine. A lawyer, it's the art, practicing the law in the well of the courtroom. Policing is the same way. There's nuance to it. But what we have now, like you said before, throwing people to the ground and all this other stuff, a knee on George Floyd's neck. I never understood that type of policing. If as cops, we would look out for each other. If one of us, listen, we could lose our temper, but another cop, my partner, would always step in and say, "Hey, Al, okay, back off." The whole thing. We'd look after each other. Not one of those cops in the George Floyd thing did that because they were afraid of that officer that had his knee on his neck. That's the type of policing. That's not the art of policing. The art of policing is discretion, knowing when to give somebody a break, knowing when somebody may have done something wrong in the moment, but yet it can be forgiven, and then a lesson is learned. We both go, home at the end of the day, and you're not like a robot. You get what I'm saying? We've lost that in policing nowadays.
Yeah. I know I said last thing, but the gun thing, I want to go back to this real quick. Because all of my police friends, they're not thrilled by the fact that we've got 400 million guns in this country. It is something that is on their mind every time they stop somebody. It's always been my belief that the more guns, the less safe police are. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, there's such a thing known as tactics. When you're engaging somebody, there's tactics that you can do that don't necessarily have to be threatening. Whenever I would talk to somebody, I carried my holster on my right hip. I would always put my left hip, so that my gun couldn't be taken away from me. I walk down the streets of New York now. I see cops that are not practicing any tactics. I don't know if they're not being trained with it anymore. But it used to be the old-timer cops that would take a young cop under his wing. I did it for many years, and I teach them those things, and you could be effective as a cop. But now cops seem to be so black and white. They don't understand that, we all do things that may be a little bit out of order. It doesn't mean you're going to slap cuffs on people. And also, cops do a bad job explaining why they're taking actions against people. I would always say to people, listen, I'm going to arrest you, but if I put you in a position to be under arrest, that means you went so far over the line that I had no choice.
Yeah.
And I always would say to people, they say, why are you arresting me? I would say, we live in a world with rules.
Yeah, you did this,
and
not me.
They would have, yeah. And that was like a eureka moment. Nobody had ever told them in their life that they live in a world with rules. That was the first time, they would shake their head. They're like, oh, my God, it was like they're telling me something that's an epiphany. But, you have to explain that to people.
Yeah. No, good stuff. Al, I appreciate the call, man. Thank you.
Yeah, enjoy your show.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Please call again. No, that was actually, I was expecting something much different out of Al. I'm glad that went well. Let's go to Stephen on lawn. Stephen, how are we doing today?
Good. You've been going in and out. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah. What's going on? How are you today?
Oh, I am A-OK, peachy.
What's on your mind?
But the country's not. No doubt in my mind. Like you've been saying, we got these politicians, and they have absolutely no moral compass. Nothing. The only thing they care about is staying in power. Once they get in, and what do? The only way you can stay in is by getting massive amounts of money. So they cater to the people that can give them and do give them the massive amount of power. And they sell their souls immediately to these people. So you got, it doesn't, the country's in a crap show. No question about it in my mind. And as far as these AR, the A in the AR doesn't stand for assault rifle. It stands for some brand, supposedly. You know, we're supposed to think they're not an assault rifle. I mean, pretty ridiculous. I don't see. It's almost like George Collins said. You know, you're sitting back just watching the things devolve. You know, just unbelievable. You know, killing children. You know,
and then to come out and say, well, it's the doors. Yeah, no, it's the guns. There's a common denominator in all these things, and it's this gun. It's these assault weapons. And when we had an assault weapons ban, these things went down. The second we got rid of it, they tripled. There seems to be a common
Look
denominator.
at what happened in Australia. In these foreign countries, completely agree. When they restricted or bought back the guns and everything, you know, it's the availability. Yes, and I hear that my brother, you know, about automobiles killing people. How many? Did they kill a whole classroom full with an automobile? You know, how much damage can you do with just about anything?
But here's the thing, Stephen. You know, I love the car argument. I love that argument because, well, you know, in order to have a car, you have to register it. You have to be proficient in it. You have to prove that you can drive it. You have to have it inspected. You have to have it insured. So if you want to go that argument, I would love to have that argument.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Meanwhile, he's a retired New York City police officer. But, yeah, we're on different sides of the fence, you know. Because for me, you know, take the guns away from people, you know. If you got a, you know, it's like my argument with this stop and frisk, you know. If you know, what about my constitutional rights not to be shot? You know, I don't know. It's a gray area to me, but yeah, we're in a dark place, and it looks like it's getting darker. You know, with these people. You know, I have a brother-in-law. They have 2 ARs, which they've modified to make them fully automatic. A bunch of ghost guns, waiting for their pistol permit, and real mad because it's taken so long for the legal carry pistol permit. You know, this is just, and they're thinking like, yeah, the Civil War's coming, and they're ready.
Yeah, and one of the questions I asked those
talking about
folks,
shooting Democrats.
And that's it. That's where it comes. That's where it comes to. Everybody that I know who's one of these carry people, you know, who can't leave the house without their fetish. It's all about they're so fearful of everything, of the others, that it's frightening to me because, you know, we're now
more like anger to me.
Exactly.
Their anger at the other, so much anger that they're willing to, you know. It's not like the old days, you know, we're talking about where, you know, we can disagree. I can be on the opposite side of the fence, but you don't feel like you have to kill me because I disagree with you and think that people should get food to eat.
Yep.
You know?
No, I'm right there with
you. It's unreal. You know, we've gotten so incredibly polarized. It's so difficult. At this point, I have to keep my mouth shut. You know, I have a sister so convinced that the election was stolen, you know what I mean? And I'm like, what about all these lawsuits and these judges that were appointed by this guy? Oh, they were paid off. Where'd you get that? What crazy, you know, thing did you get that from? Another family members. Another one that thinks, you know, that this virus comes from out of state. She sends me to some website called London Real. And I'm a scientist, so I'm trying to explain to her that, yeah, very small amounts, but it's not enough to affect you, these amounts that, you know, get through to the cell phone. It's just like, and these are, you know, blood relatives. So I'm like, wait a minute, you pretty much have to have the same type of brain that I have. How come we're on such opposite sides of the fence so much? It's just so crazy. And this is, you know, I know it. So many, and I'm not alone.
This is why you can't stop speaking. That's why now's the time to speak up and not be silent, Stephen. We need sane. We need rational.
I'm not. It's just like I don't take an adversarial position. But as I said, I pointed out, what about all these lawsuits? You know what I mean? But when they come at you with the unreality of, you know, these people are, you know, what about they get paid off? I'm like, well, where'd you get that?
Yeah.
You know, and they don't have an answer. They're not looking for an answer. They've gone down in the rabbit hole so deep. You know, a bunch of anti-vaxxers. Meanwhile, I've given many, many, many vaccines. You know, and I hear on on this station we're on right now about how many deaths have been caused by the vaccine. You know, I would like to see the stats because I heard it was like 30,000 that the government said. This is on a 12 o'clock program on this station. And I'm like, that's not anything I've heard or
I've never
read.
heard that.
You know, so, yeah. And, and, you know, I know what I heard. And it wasn't long ago at all, like this past week. So, and meanwhile, I could agree with so much of what that gentleman says. And then all of a sudden they'll come out with something and I'll say, uh-oh. You know what I mean? Off the deep end. And, yeah. And of course, members of my family too. You know, here I'm giving vaccinations, and they're like, "You're killing people. You're hurting people." I'm like, "Well, I'm going to get my second booster shot myself." You know what I mean? It's like I must believe something, but so much. Like I said, the polarization goes so deep. It's not just the guns; it's the vaccines. It's the fact that they're just thinking. You know, I got a brother-in-law, like he's talking, when it happens, he's going to shoot Democrats.
No, and that's the scary part of this, because there's this fantasy. There's this fantasy that they're going to take out the other, save the country, you know, water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants and patriots. It's crazy. I appreciate the call, Stephen. I really do.
Yeah, you too.
Good stuff. It's amazing. It really is amazing what some of these folks think, and scary on whole other levels as well. Let's go to Archie Archie from New Jersey on line 3. Archie, how are we doing today?
I feel bleak. Honestly, like, I don't see this getting better. And something you said earlier kind of confused me as well. Because, like, in my mind, I don't see a reason to have any high-powered weapons on the streets available to anyone. That's like military grade stuff. Why is that available to like Joe Schmo?
No, I don't disagree with you. I don't think I said that we should have them.
You said it was fun.
It is fun. Like I've shot them. I've shot them. It is fun.
I have too. But like it does not feel like it. Again, that's why I feel so bleak. Like it feels like it's never going to get stopped. It's just going to keep happening.
No, and this is why I think our elected leaders have got to do the right thing in this moment. But I look at Senator Kevin Cramer from North Dakota, who's quite frank. He said the reason this isn't going to happen, the reason that hasn't happened to this point, is because if I did vote for something, my constituents would throw me out of office. That's the reason nothing's going to happen, is because he believes that they're going to all throw him out of office. They're more interested in their own power and remaining in office than doing the right thing.
Yeah, but it like scares me. Like my nephews are 4 and 6. You know, like this shit freaks me out. Sorry, but it really does. And it should anger all of us.
Know. This is.
I don't think it's ever gonna end. It just feels like it's just gonna keep going, and then it makes me feel like it's like a simulation. Like it'll never just end.
Yeah, but here, Archie, is where
it sounds silly, but
here's where I got to turn this around, because despair is where they want us to be. This is exactly where the gun folks want us to be. Oh, nothing's ever going to change. Nothing's going to get done. No, we've got to demand things get done. And this has got to be something that because we go through this cycle. We have these horrible tragedies. There's outrage. There's thoughts and prayers. There's talk of, hey, something gets done. Nothing gets done. And then we forget about it. We got to not forget about it.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, we can't forget it. All right, man. Good show.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Archie. No, that's the point in all this. I mean, and I feel terrible listening to Archie say he feels despair, because, I myself, sometimes, honestly, I feel the same thing. Sometimes I get, to the point where, is this ever going to change? Are we ever going to, get out of this mess? And then I go, we've got to fight even harder. We've got to do more. We've got to push even harder. We've got to demand more. That's where we are. For me, it's that simple. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK.
Divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I never dreamed of growing up to be a political activist commentator, but here I am, and it worked out pretty well for me. I've been lucky enough to have a voice in public matters and eke out a modest living running my mouth as an independent populist agitator. Still, I have to confess to the sin of job envy. Not in the sense of being resentful, but regretful about my own inability to lift the trade of journalistic commentary to the heights attained by a small, feisty collection of unique public opinionators, political cartoonists. In framing issues and rallying people to think and act, these journalists have an unfair advantage over us mere word crafters. They can literally draw a picture to make their point. They reach masses viscerally as well as cerebrally, and visceral usually outpunches cerebral. Editorial cartooning is a profession made up largely of progressive mavericks who enter the social, political, cultural fray with an abundance of anti-establishment audacity, an eye for irony, fondness for the underdog, and an ability to laugh at absurdity, plus artistic talent. Because cartooning is an expression of the human spirit that's been irrepressible since cave drawings, generation after generation of pen and ink champions of democracy blossomed. The general public's appreciation and demand for the cartoonist's unblinking honesty and satire have never flagged, even increasing whenever the artists come under public assault by autocrats, plutocrats, screwballs, and assorted other censors. These graphic editorial artists matter. Again and again, they've roused the public to rise up and put down corporate and political scoundrels, incrementally advancing our nation's democratic possibilities. As in the natural world, though, even the most beneficial creatures can be driven to extinction. This is Jim Hightower saying, check your own local newspaper. Are your favorite cartoonists still there? The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour, live streamed from the Chat and Chew Cafe. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment, something on your mind, want to hear it. You know, a moment ago, Al said we got to do something on the mental health front, and I agree. You know, we've got to do something with mental health, and there's a whole bunch of ideas and things we should be doing. But I look at the news report out now, and Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, it's being reported, says he slashed $211 million from the department that oversees mental health in the state of Texas. And in fact, you know, Texas ranks last out of all 50 states and the District of Columbia when it comes to overall access to mental health care. So again, setting the table for where things are. Let's go to the phones. Got Denise on line one. Denise, how are we doing today?
I'm doing well, and you?
I can't complain. What's on your mind?
Wanted to talk about a couple of things that you mentioned. First of all, to the people who are speaking about gun control, the majority of American people want gun control. There are some people, I think that brother spoke about how he had some people in his family who don't feel that way, but the majority of the American people want gun control.
I'd argue, Denise, I argue everybody agrees with gun control. It's just a matter of where you draw the line.
Assault weapons, for one thing, is something that should not be any place in our environment. Rifles and what have you. People who are mentally imbalanced and already have records indicating that they've had altercations should not be able to get guns. All of the people that have done these gun shootings, most of them have had on record different mental difficulties. As for the mental situation, my sister used to work for a facility, and she was speaking about, hey, they closed down these facilities, and then they wonder why we're having problems. You cut the budget, you're going to have that difficulty. Most people want single-payer health care. You know what I'm saying? The medical system that's in place currently is to not to heal us, but to placate us, give us medications that cost hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars, and we can't pay it, and then we go bankrupt. And that has to do with all of us.
Yeah.
Every American, black, white, Chinese, gay, straight, all of us. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
We need to start to pull together for things that we have to get done. Single-payer health care, gun control. Manchin is trying to get ahead of the crowd because he realizes if the average person, the majority of Americans, start to really light a fire under these people's, they're going to change the laws, and they're going to change them with some kind of real power behind them. Manchin wants to get in front of it so he can introduce a bill that doesn't really mean anything at all. Don't allow that. There's a really excellent, the brother who had his son murdered during the Sandy Hook period. He has an excellent a site where you can sign up and you can get information. I'm really wanting to know about others. If people on your listening to your program want to know what they can do, it's a start, and it's a very powerful and very well thought out site. And all you have to put is Sandy Hook, and you'll see his site come up. I understand there are several others. If we can get information pertaining to that, that would be helpful as well. We need to get people together of like minds. Most American people are about moving forward, and being able to live a decent life.
Right.
We're not trying to hurt each other. We're trying to just live,
Well, the majority of us,
thing.
I think I'm with you. The majority of us are just trying to live, right?
I'm with you, my brother. You know what I'm saying? And all we have to do now is to figure out how we're going to pull the majority of these people together and figure out how we're going to move so that we can make some kind of impact. And your show, Mr. Smith, is one of them. You allow the voice of the public on the air. I'm getting very upset with WBAI because we're not seeing that as much as it should be. I'm a CAB member as well. But your program is about hearing the voice of the people, so that we can come and hear each other and start to figure out how we're going to organize.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My brother.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Good call. Look, at the end of this, we've got a lot of work to do, and it starts with having conversations and coming together and demanding our elected leaders do what we need to get done. Let's go to Barb in New Jersey on line 3. Barb, how are we doing today?
Good, thank you, Rick. I wanted to say I believe that the government has the power all along. It's like Dorothy with the red slippers. All we have to do is say to the gun makers, you can either sell to the federal government or you can sell to civilians, but the federal government will not purchase any weapons from gun makers who sell assault weapons to civilians. It'll be sort of a Hyde Amendment where federal dollars cannot go to gun makers that also market to civilians.
Yeah, but do you see them going,
for
okay,
the
well,
assault-style weapons?
Do you see it as a possibility where the industry then goes, okay, well, this half of the industry will sell to government, this half of the industry will then sell to civilians?
Well, and the half that's stuck with the civilians will not be very happy because the monies particularly with federal dollars, that's not just the U.S. government. A lot of that federal monies are trickled out to the states and the local governments. So it's going to dry up a huge part of their market. And it's easy peasy. It could even just be practically a procurement issue.
No, that's an interesting thought.
And it doesn't violate the Second Amendment.
That is an interesting thought. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Let's go to Rose on line 2. Rose, how are we doing today?
Fine. How are you?
I am fantastic. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I've got a couple of points to make and then a couple of questions. One of them is that when I was a kid and my father used to take all kinds of little road trips here and there, you would come into signs. We don't make signs that, along the side of the road anymore saying that you had to, if you had to register firearms with the police when you came into that municipality. The other thing is we seem to also not understand that we have the capacity to get dogs into the picture of protecting our schools and what have you. Not, hanging out and, irritating the children, but to have them in lock cages, an electronic lock. Dogs, especially ones who've been in the pound for too long, become very, very good at smelling accelerants, for arson, as well as gunpowder, and they're also great psychologists. I mean, dogs sense stuff,
Yeah, dogs. That is something that I hadn't thought of, because one of the things, that I say, the best home defense is a dog. But dogs might not be a bad idea. I mean, my school district, we've got sheep that roam around the solar panels. Why not dogs?
Yeah, well, it just makes perfect sense because it's been statistically shown that the dogs that come out of the pounds, I mean, we kill millions of dogs a year, the sort of less desirable ones, and they know when they get adopted again, boy, they loyal, and they can be trained. So why we don't have one next to the guard at the door and electronic locks on the door, and as a dog gets nervous, you click that baby, and it's like ankle city. We just don't seem to get practical and basic.
Yeah.
As far as, it's really wonderful to listen to policemen because I lived in New York City for 20 years. I had great respect, and cousins are in the police business. But there's also the factor we have quotas, and especially in the states which pride themselves on having no taxes, how do they keep everything going? They're keeping it by nailing people on the road, getting them into a trap, so to speak. And you can be disabled, and they'll do it to you. I've had that happen.
Yeah.
We're just not. And by the way, the other thing I heard earlier today was that it's not just the NRA because that guy, he messed up. But if they couldn't have any armaments in when Ted Cruz or Donald, I think they were both not military, showed up. It's just it's just horrible. I mean, we're so-called Christian nation. If this is Christianity, I'm going to go down to the paint factory as well. Reagan, the others. This is really.
Yeah, well, we're killing each other. It's sad stuff. Rose, I appreciate the call. Thanks.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Good stuff. Did anyone else find it creepy that Trump read the names of all the victims and then pronounced them poorly? I mean, that just I found that really creepy, and then did the little dance at the end of it. Found that creepy as well. Let's go to line 4. We got Gregory from Long Island. Gregory, what's on your mind?
Hi, Rick. How are you?
I'm good. What's going on?
Good. I recently discovered your show, and I love the labor narrative and the historicity. It's when you narrate sometimes and give the history, I'm riveted. I actually appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, you had a caller, Al, that was a former NYPD officer, and he was selective in summarily diagnosing the people that somehow find themselves embroiled in shootings, and they said that they were mentally challenged. And I say that to say this: that I'm 2 houses down from an NYPD officer, nice guy. We're friends and so forth. But recently got a copy of the Civilian Review Complaint Board record and found that choking out the pregnant 15-year-old and 17-year-olds and calling them the N-word. So I say that to say this: if the shooters and the population are to be subjected to mental analysis, what about the people in uniforms and with badges in an office? Don't you think that the criticism should be, across the board as opposed to selectively to these people? Because there are some people in office and in uniforms and with badges that should not be on the force.
No, I completely agree. Absolutely. And
but anyway.
And this is where I say this all the time. I am a strong supporter of the police when they're not wrong. I know it's a tough job. I know it's a difficult job. And they should get the praise and all of the good words that we give them when they're not wrong. And when they are wrong, we have to hold them accountable. We have to hold them to a higher standard, I believe, than the rest of society, because we do give them a privileged position. We do give them more power than the average person. So I'm with you.
I agree with you. I say that the cops that are actual professionals and good people, we should protect them with our resources, with our lives, and with our bodies, because we need them. They are our allies. And as you say, the ones who are criminals in uniforms, we need to get rid of them. That's my point.
Okay,
Thank you, Rick.
Good stuff, man. I appreciate it, Gregory. Thank you so much. No, look, I mean, when the whole defund the police thing went on, I was not there. I've always taken the position I support our police. We need them, but I support them when they're not wrong. When they're wrong, yeah, it's like anything else. It's like Al said, it's got to have that epiphany moment. You messed up. You got to be held accountable. That just seems sane and rational to me. Let's go to line 3. We've got Greg from New Jersey. Greg, how are we doing today?
Somewhat happy Saturday and very tragic Saturday. I gotta say, dear sir, every couple of weeks you bring up something that I almost drive off the highway, hit something. Before it was about the sand hogs and the Holland Tunnel. Today, Centralia, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Folks, if I know with the price of gas, it's ridiculous right now, but many years ago, I lived for a little while out near Scranton, and we went one day, a group of us, out to Centralia. It looks like the apocalypse.
Yep, still burning.
There's no town. There's some roads that are abandoned, right? There's a cemetery. On the hill, there's, I think, a Byzantine Catholic or Orthodox church. I think it's in use, but only by a couple people. But this has been going on for half a century, and it could go on for another couple hundred years, right?
Yeah, no, they're saying it could go on well after I'm dead and my kids are dead, because it's just burning and burning and burning. And you can go there, and it's eerie and creepy how the temperature is it's the weirdest place I've ever been. It's like the apocalypse happened right there.
To stand in July in Pennsylvania, as I did, this will be about in 2008, and there's smoke coming out of the ground, and the ground is warm. I was like, okay, somebody's goofing on me here, you know? Abuse of nature, abuse of God's creation at the worst. An overall thing you mentioned last week, and some of the people here in the Democratic Committee in Passaic County have been talking about this. And this we play that by the Republicans play to win, we play to be nice. A pretty smart guy a while back said warfare is a continuation of politics is a continuation of warfare by other means. That was Mr. Napoleon. What did he know, right? To win the next election, absolutely, Sherrod Brown. Absolutely. Yep. You win the heartland. You win Pennsylvania. You win Ohio. You win the Michigan. You win Wisconsin. No buts or no answer buts, whatever the expression is. The second thing is you put as vice president a Latina, a Latin woman in Congress if there is one from either Texas or Florida. You win Florida. You put them on the defensive in Texas. You scare the heck out of them in New Mexico and Arizona. Our party spent gazillions of dollars a couple of years ago, as that idiot Pelosi said, we were trying to find a message. No, this is reality. We have to win these elections, otherwise there'll be a lot more Centralias and a hell of a lot more school shootings.
Yeah, here's the message. We're going to make lives better. That's the message. We're going to
God
actually
forbid,
do something.
Right?
We're going to actually ball up our digits and get in there and fight for working people and make lives better. And that's going to start
with Sherrod Brown
doing something on this gun issue.
He would have beaten Trump by 15 million. I mean, come on.
I agree.
Wow.
That's why he's my choice. That's why I'm pushing for him.
He should be. Absolutely. He's a labor man. He's a good man. I mean, wow.
Good stuff. Appreciate it, Greg.
Thank you, sir.
As always, good stuff. I'm hoping he's my guy. I would love to see that. Let's go to line 1. We've got Phil from New Jersey, one of our WBAI buddies. Phil, how are you today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I am good. What's on your mind? And thank you for being one of our WBAI buddies.
Excuse me?
And thank you for being a WBAI buddy. Appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. It's my pleasure. To pivot back to the guns and all these things, can't the senators or any of the people in the higher parts of the government get a lawsuit and start suing the lobbyist companies that are paying off the government officials and sue them for every gun that's killed anybody. I mean, it's ridiculous.
No, they can't at this point. I mean, can we pass a law to do that? Yeah, we can take away the exemption that they have. We can make them accountable, but we're not going to, because they spend all of that money lobbying and buying our system. We've got the best democracy money can buy.
Sad. Very, very sad.
And that's why you and me and the rest of us, everybody listening, we need to be voting for candidates who are going to say we're going to do something on lobbying reform. We're going to do something about getting money out of politics. But you know, when your self-interest is, hey, I got to stay in power because I know better, and you know the necessary evil is taking this corporate money so that I can stay in power. This is how we get where we are.
Yeah. It's sad, but I was just wondering if that could be a possibility, but I guess not. But we've got to do something about these lobbyists. These lobbyists are no good. And somehow we got to figure out how to get rid of them.
Yep, I'm with you.
Because, I mean, who they're representing, come on. It's evil, that's all I can tell you. And what we saw in Texas and Buffalo is just evil. Enough is enough. That's all I can tell you. God bless you. God bless America. God bless the police and the armed forces.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, and have a good Memorial Day.
You too. Thank you, brother. Good stuff. Let's go we got Derek on line 2. Derek, how are we doing today?
Hello. Okay, how are you doing?
I'm good. What's on your mind, brother?
So, with the school shootings and some other facts, school shootings make up about 2% of all mass shootings.
Right.
You know, I get it that they're horrible, you know, but that's the fact. I mean, they're about 2% of all mass shootings. Most mass shootings do not involve schools or anything. The other thing is I'm a native New York. I lived in New York City most of my life, right? Homeless people do not have guns, all right? You know, I mean, guns cost a lot of money. There's registrations, and you can't get an illegal gun. I mean, you can't say, hey, I'm homeless. Can I get a gun for, you know, like 50 cents? And when homeless people get money, they kind of spend it on necessities. So this whole fantasy that there's homeless people just crazy running around New York with guns and committing crimes, that's just wrong. And you know, the fellow who was NYPD saying this, I said, well, that's just wrong. And some of the homeless people, right? I know some people who are homeless. They're white, and if you saw them, you would say, well, I could make a lot of money. I'll put it this way: I could make a lot of money fooling people with lineups saying, well, who's homeless and who's not, because you would not guess, because that's just it. We need to really face some hard, cold facts here with these myths about homeless people, right? Because you have homeless people who are mentally ill. You have homeless people who are not mentally ill. You have people they're living good lives. You have people who are running countries who are not all there, all right? The mayor of New York City has just re-traumatized a whole lot of homeless people with his policies, okay? So we need to understand these things.
No, I agree with you. I
agree
with you.
So, and the other thing, two other things. One, there was a study done in the, about 20 years ago. It's like, well, how did all these youth gangs get guns? In the 70s. And it's a war, right? Wars put all these guns into circulation, right? So when America wages all these wars and, funds all these groups and says it's all for democracy or whatever, well, you put all these guns in circulation on a world scale. Because we really don't know how many guns there are out there in the U.S. now. We just don't, all right? And the last thing, you know, my thing with the Buffalo shooter and sort of these ideological people, not the folks who are just demonstrably mentally ill and they're tortured, and you know, like the fellow in Texas and everything who go shoot up schools. But because I've actually read what the Buffalo shooter wrote, and he's good. You know, he's got some issues, but he's coherent. I mean, people have been misled about this guy. Right, he's racist and white supremacist, but he's not stupid, and he's got his thought out ideology. Right. And my thing, I said, especially for black people, I think black people need to get up off it and say we need to form a group and monitor these people. Okay, we need to monitor these white supremacists. You know, because you can, you know, it's the internet. You can fake a name. Because you know this whole thing. Oh, we're going to get guns and guard. But no, that's not going to work. You need to monitor these people because they have well thought out ideologies, and a lot of what this guy wrote has nothing to do. After a certain point, there's the racism and the really profound anti-Semitism, but a lot of it's very practical. How to target a community, right? Where to go to get guns, where to go to get body armor, bullets, and everything. He's even got advice about, you know, don't use this site. He's got websites to go to. Okay, he's got opinions about the Republicans. He's got opinions about the left. He's got opinions about capitalism and environmentalism. All right, this isn't just like just some nut babbling in the street is what I'm saying.
No, he had a long manifesto.
Because, we also because the one thing with this guy, we're definitely being misled by the media.
No, his manifesto was a list of all the right-wing grievances and all of the anti.
No. It's more than that, is what I'm saying. No, there is that, but there's a lot more than that.
Of course it is. It's all of the white supremacy. It's all of the. I'm agreeing.
No, it's not. It's not. No, you're not. We're not. What I'm saying is that he's got a practical manual and consumer guide about where to go, how to get things. He's got prices. Have you read what this guy wrote?
I've read excerpts of it, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. Because I've read a lot of it. Because what shocked me was not the racist stuff, which I was kind of expecting, but all the practical stuff and where to go, and even where not to get stuff. Okay? I mean, it's a real detailed consumer guide. And, I'll be brutally honest, and it's a lot more detailed and a lot, I mean, if you want to carry out these sort of, anti-black, terrorist acts, it's a lot more detailed than some of these so-called revolutionaries who are parading around, who are on BAI or wherever. I mean, they can't do anything like this. I mean, it's got websites, prices, who will rip you off, to get guns, bullets, body armor. I mean, it's very, very detailed, and it's hundreds of pages, and it's written coherently.
All right.
All right.
So
we need to understand this.
Right. No, I think you just made a good argument.
You just can't say, well, it's a screed, and it's racist and all that. And, I'll tell you something else. White people in America have been killing black people for a long time. It's not going to stop with just guns. All right? It's not going to stop with just guns. People need to think ahead. This kid, he was using, he used a symbol. This is a symbol used by the Azov battalion in Ukraine. All right? And what are they doing? What are they doing against the Russians? These neo-Nazis, some of them are straight up fascists and Nazis that America's denying. Right? What were they doing? Coming to a black neighborhood near you. Okay. What are those neo-Nazis doing in Ukraine? Do you know?
I don't know.
No. Okay. Drones with grenades and bombs. Okay, think of Tulsa, where they drop bombs on black people. That's the next thing. It's not just going to be guns. I mean, people need to really think, because all this stuff. I mean, this legislation with guns. I mean, it's probably not going to go anywhere.
It's not going anywhere
for a lot of reasons. But people need to really think more
So
beyond.
Are you on the side of doing anything on gun legislation, or leave it the way it is?
No, my thing is like it says, okay, I don't think gun legislation is really going to get anywhere. So what's your plan B? What's your plan B?
What do you mean? What's the plan B? You have to do something.
Well, if it doesn't get anywhere, what do you do?
Well, you're going to have to continue to organize around getting people who are going to do something. You're going to have to do something.
Okay, so the other side keeps organizing, so you end up in this dance. It just goes back and forth. More people get killed. So what do?
Well, you're going to have to continue to seek out who these people are and strengthen reporting laws and strengthen watching.
No, well, see what I'm saying. My suggestion is, especially since, this guy targeted black people. I think that there should be, and it's kind of shocking that the black organizations aren't sort of doing this. That these folks should be monitored by black people. They should be, like black Klansmen, sort of infiltrated. And so when they say, well, they put it on the internet, well, I'm going to attack this black community. Well, we know, and we can deal with it. Because everybody else is unreliable.
No, there you go. Maybe that's
right? In Texas, the police were unreliable. They're unreliable. And what happens on any other job when you're unreliable?
You get fired, or you're supposed to anyway.
Or you get your pay cut, or you get defunded. Defunded is pay cut, right? Right? But so yeah, okay, yeah. You understand me?
So you're going to
go. You just can't go with one plan.
Okay, so you're on the defund the police frame then.
No, I'm on a multiple pronged approach, and I think that my thing is that if the police are not going to do their job, if they're going to just we can't do this, it's okay, fine. So we're going to take away some of your money and give it to a group
All right, there's an
that
idea.
does do it.
All right, that's a good idea. I
All right,
appreciate the thoughts.
That's it. And I do think that the police are given too much to do.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea.
That's just it. But you can't just rely. You just can't. Everybody just does this dance. They get to be guns. Everybody's fetishizing the guns, and because no one really wants to deal with. We talk about the culture.
No, you're
right. But no one wants to
Yeah.
really deal with that after a certain point.
No, you're right. It's a good idea. It's something that should actually be done. I appreciate the call. I got to move along. Thanks so much. Let's go to real quick. We get Nick on line 3. Nick from Wayne. Wayne, how are you, Nick? What's on your mind?
Hi, doing good. Thanks for having me, Rick. I wanted to talk a little bit about student loan debt. So there's been recently a lot of buzz about it. In fact, I was just at University of Delaware with some other folks there, sort of trying to, push Biden and/or show a presence, and him actually.
Yeah.
At least even sticking with his campaign promise.
Yeah, I was going to get to that today.
Canceling all student debt.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. I think he has done the worst thing he could possibly do, or so far what's being proposed. Maybe you can help me here. What I'm understanding is they're talking about doing $10,000 in debt forgiveness. Is that what's being reported?
Yeah, that's what I think I've heard being reported, that and $125,000 sort of like means testing cap in regards to that, which also is not his campaign promise. He actually promised canceling all undergraduate, public debt that was like tuition related, as well as helping students who went to HBCUs or MSIs,
I don't remember all.
and paying off their debt.
Yeah, I don't remember him saying all.
So those were just what.
I don't remember all student loan debt, but I think this is the worst.
No. Rick, what I said was all undergraduate public student loan debt.
Okay.
There was something that it was like all like tuition related, public undergraduate student loan debt. If you check out, there's a Medium post that Biden had put up back during when he was campaigning, as well as there's an article on Inside Higher Ed I could send you.
Yeah, if you would,
which
please.
actually states that.
If you would, I would love to see that.
But regardless, but regardless, though, I find it quite saddening that Biden has, he touts, or he tried to tout, that he wanted to be the most pro-union, president in American history. And yet you have, various unions coming out and calling for broad student loan debt cancellation. In fact, you even have APSCUF in our state, the faculty union of public higher ed in PA, and they actually called for full federal student loan debt cancellation. You also have the NAACP who have, said that like $10,000 is not enough, and they're calling for, $50,000. I'm a part of the debt collective, and we're calling for all, student loan debt to be canceled, because Biden does have the executive authority with the flick of a pen to just cancel it. But he's, deciding not to do it, just holding this debt over debtors' heads, and just continuing various, cycles of oppression, I would say, and just, harming so many communities and so many people just right now, just by just not doing a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this, and this is a typical Democratic move. Being afraid to go bold and do the big thing, which would be to get rid of everything, or doing nothing. So we're going to do a little bit, and I don't know that 10 is enough, but I've also thought that there's part of me, and maybe you'll come along with me. I think this is going to, without solving the problem for the next generation, because we're not solving any problems. We're just picking a generation and saying, okay, we're going to forgive this for you, but next generation, better luck. Maybe down the road we'll forgive this. I'm fearing that we're tearing generations apart even more and causing I don't know, more problems down the road. I'm curious how you see that.
Yeah, I really wouldn't see it like that, just because, I mean, you could argue, although, I'm sure some would be like, why would he do that? You could argue that, any president could just continually cancel student loan debt, which sounds like, a weird thing, I'm sure, to most. But I would argue that actually, doing so now is something that can, help spark for folks in understanding that, things like public higher education, or, if we can do this for medical debt, if we can do this for other forms of debt, that, we actually understand that debt shouldn't exist, right? That these things like education, like healthcare, are basic human needs and should be treated as such. And that, the fact that there is any kind of debt is immoral. And, also this debt, of course, very much harms folks. And I would argue is almost like a form of wage theft, right? Because, your debt will just continue to accrue and accrue, like student debt, with the interest that you have. And, meanwhile, are your wages going up? No. So who is that hurting the most? Those in like the working class. And then, I even heard, someone today say, oh, well, what about people who, didn't even go to college? Or what about people who are not, or who didn't take out loans because they didn't, want to go because they thought that it would be too expensive? Well, as I would argue, we should make sure that we have free public higher education in this country. It's not, I just want to cancel debt. It's, I want to cancel debt, and we need free college.
Right. That's
Biden
down the
right
road.
now has the executive authority to do so.
Right. But Nick, debt. Where I'm going is this, where my concern is we're ripping ourselves apart, and we're dividing ourselves on, much like you said, there are people that I know who didn't go to college because they couldn't afford it. And, they've taken lower paying jobs because, hey, I didn't want to take out a massive debt. How do you not make them angry? I know every person that's my age who, took out small amounts of student loans and paid them back, they're going to be ticked off by going, hey, I had to pay mine back. We're causing this intergenerational kind of anger, which is why I said from the beginning, and maybe you'll have a thought on this, people took out loans. The fair thing is, okay, you got to pay those loans back, but we're going to do it at 0% interest. You took out $10,000 in loans, you pay back $10,000. That's it. No interest, no compounding, no penalties, none of that nonsense. And we put an end date on it. After so many years, we forgive down the road, but there's got to be some appearance that you took some of it out, you paid some of it back. I'm curious your thought.
Yeah, I disagree with that framing, right? I think of it as the framing of this debt should not exist, right?
Okay.
Let me take, for instance, of something in this country that a lot of people don't know about. There's school lunch debt, right? K to 12 kids who have debt for, just a lunch, right? Are we going to do something like that for them? Are we going to say that, well, their family should pay some of that off? No. right? I think that we should cancel that, right? Just like I think that we should cancel all student debt. And the way that, you try to say this quote unquote sort of fairness idea.
Yeah, but aren't those different?
Why don't we just tax Jeff Bezos? Why don't we just go ahead?
I think those are different. I think I think that's different.
No, I agree. I'm just using that as like an example of.
Yeah, but that's apples and oranges. I'm saying, because if you got a college education, your opportunity of having more income and doing much better economically.
Sure. And then you tax that, and then you say you tax that higher, right? And then you say,
okay.
That I am saying that we need in part a reimagined society in terms of public higher education being a real public good. And also, I would argue, being someone who's, in my like early to mid 20s now, and, generations before me had basically free college or close to free college, right? And I would argue that I deserve that, just like everyone in society deserves that.
I don't
and
argue
I
with you,
think
Phil.
that is also the huge, I think that's the huge generational divide too, right? And it's, there are people definitely, I would argue, you could say, caught in the middle of that might say one way or the other. But I don't want to argue with people on, well, what about me? What about me? Because what we need to do as a country is understand that public higher education should be a public good, that we should cancel this debt because it is immoral. Why does anyone have debt for trying to get an education, to better themselves, to go ahead? If you want to say that, there are some people out there that they did not get that chance, I get that, but that's how society works, and that's how we end up, going on and on and on.
Right.
There are definitely, things along the line in terms of social progress in which we change, and that's what we need to do today by, having Biden cancel student debt with the flick of a pen, and fighting for free public higher education, fighting
good
for
argument.
Medicare for all, fighting for all these other things.
So last question I've got for you then, who pays for it? Because I know that's the first question. Somebody's got to pay for this. Who's going to be?
Yeah. So I mean, I think it depends, Rick, on your economic understanding and framing. There are economists out there who argue this does not really cost anything, which I know for a lot of people sounds kind of crazy, but that money is already out the door, right? Like the thing is that the federal government will not be collecting on whatever debts and just turning them into grants, kind of like what we did with PPP money, kind of like what we do with various other things, you could say with banks, with, whatever. And, in part, I could argue that, you could also just say, well, why don't we just, I don't know, tax Wall Street? Why don't we just tax Jeff Bezos? As I would say a lot of the times, I'm not interested in saying, how are we exactly going to pay for it? Because we should fight for this, public higher education to be a human right, right? It's the same thing with Medicare for all. It's the same thing with, name whatever, sort of progressive-esque thing. Because I think to myself, it's the moral argument first, and then we understand as a society, well, this is how it should be. We will find a way to pay for it.
I don't disagree with you. We do need to figure out a way to ensure that you can get through an education as far as your talents will take you, not as deep as your pocketbook is. I'm all on board with that. My problem is we're in a moment where we're not fixing the long-term problems, and I think we need to do that as well. So I know I said last question. You're only talking about the publicly held debt. What do you do with the education incorporated debt?
The private.
The big banks who have so much of this. I've got a young relative who's like $100,000 into student loan debt. Yeah. Most of it are private loans at like 8, 9, 11% interest. What do you do with those folks?
I mean, I would argue, right? So the same thing happens in various other forms of debt, right? You have sort of like public debt or you have private debt. And, just like what happens with, I'll take medical debt, for instance, right? I'm just using this as an example. Medical debt, a lot of the times, will get bought and sold on like a secondary debt market, right? The federal government can almost do the same thing, right? You can just do a literal debt buy and just cancel the debt, right? The Debt Collective recently actually did that for about, I think it was 500 or so students at Bennett College, historically black women's college. And, it's something that the government could literally do. And that's what I would argue they should do with any
private debt that's out there.
All right.
Is just buy it up for pennies on the dollar, which you can do, and just say, hey, it's no longer. It's canceled. It's gone.
I like the idea. Any place where we should send people to get more information?
I would encourage people to check out the Debt Collective. We're a debtors union, and not just fighting for the cancellation of student debt, but also medical debt. I'm a part of the PA Debt Collective, and we're doing stuff. That's why I brought up lunch debt. We're doing some lunch debt stuff. If you check out in Bucks County, so check us out there. If you check at Strike Debt on Twitter or on Instagram at the Debt Collective or at PA Debt Collective, or just, debtcollective.com, whatnot. But just thanks for letting me talk.
No, I appreciate I was going to get into it, and you did a better job than I was going to do, so I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Nick.
Thanks.
Good stuff. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment? We still got some time. Also, remember, become a WBAI buddy by going to WBAI.org.
Work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1943. That was the day 50,000 striking rubber workers ended their 5-day walkout in Akron, Ohio. It was World War II, and the no-strike pledge was in full effect. Bosses were awash in defense contract profits. At the same time, they used the no-strike pledge to violate collective bargaining agreements, crank up assembly line production, and ignore grievances. As one sympathetic headline read, workers forced to strike in defense of their living standards, slashed by soaring prices, taxes, and anti-union profiteers. Workers at Goodyear, Firestone, and Goodrich had petitioned the War Labor Board for an 8-cent raise and shift differentials that they were entitled to per the Little Steel formula. For a year, they waited patiently and were outraged when they learned the board had only granted a 3-cent raise. Firestone and Goodrich workers threw down their tools immediately and poured out of the factories. Goodyear workers soon followed. In a protest telegram to the board, United Rubber Workers leaders pointed out that living costs had increased by 23% since January 1941. They also noted that essential to maintaining the no-strike agreement was a just settlement of grievances and a $25,000 cap on executive salaries, neither of which had been adhered to. The walkout was one of the first major challenges to the no-strike pledge. Women took the lead as picket captains and dispatchers. Their leadership was accepted without question. Flying pickets cruised the city to enforce picket lines. Black workers at Firestone, impressed by the union's fight for equal rights, figured prominently in the strike. Workers returned to the job with their spirits high, having forced the board to reconsider their demands.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I did want to get into a whole bunch about the student loan stuff. We're really running out of time. Also, the baby formula stuff. We've had a couple more airlifts of baby formula, so you're not going to hear a lot about that on the news. We're bringing it in, so there's no more. The shortage isn't going to be as bad as the folk on the far right wants to make this out to be. Again, interestingly enough, no legislation on how to break up the big monopoly that we've seen in the form or any of our shortages. Again, lots of finger pointing, lots of anger, not much in the way of policy to actually get something done. And this is the frustration that I have with a lot of our finger pointing pointer outers. Not much in getting the policy to move us forward. Let's go to the phones. We got Kevin on line 3. Kevin, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Rick. How are you?
I can't complain. What's on your mind?
Thank you for taking my call. A quick thing with the student loan. I used to think that we should pay our student loans, right? Because, that's how it's always been.
Right.
But then I saw a couple of things since COVID when Harvard has, like, I forgot if it's $50 billion, they have some insane amount of money, and they were laying off the food workers. And here's the main thing. The teacher, all the professors, a lot of them just work for slave wages, right? Because they don't get, they're not paid well, most professors. They're, the ones that are lucky get it. Yeah, so they get screwed over, right? And you see how hard these professors worked. I remember when I was in college, man, they worked their asses off, and they're not making a lot of money. So, I saw that. So here's the thing. So they don't. The student loans should be forgiven then, because these colleges just scammed everybody. And I wanted to say one more thing, if I can. The Texas situation. Remember? Now if the teachers could be given the right to carry and a copy of the movie Gloria, remember Gloria? Then when 1980 Gloria, right?
Yeah.
When the punk comes in the room, when a punk comes in to hurt their babies, they'll know what to do, because we saw the police stood there for an hour, and political correctness has changed things in some good ways, some bad ways, but the cops were frozen for an hour, and the kids were calling 911 begging. So the teachers should be allowed. It's a new age we're living in. The teachers should be given that choice. It's kind of like if you were in an airplane that's going to crash. Would you rather have a parachute or not? We'll charge you $20 if you want a parachute, but if it's going down anyway, why not jump out, and at least you have the chance? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, see,
So,
I'm not going to go with you on the gun issue, and I've talked to a lot of teachers who have said, "Look,
what if it was your daughter?" I'm sorry.
Yeah,
if it was your daughter, bro. I mean, come on.
Yeah, have you been in a classroom with a bunch of kids?
Well, one of the cops' daughters died. One of the cops on the scene, his daughter died. You imagine. Now, here's the thing: they were arresting parents for disorderly conduct, for forcing the cops in. One of the parents broke away, and she jumped over, and she got in and saved her kids. You can look it up.
Yeah, I know.
But they were
That's
arresting
insane.
the parents.
This whole thing is insane to me.
We're in a new age. The police are frozen. The police are afraid sometimes. They don't know. Remember Beretta? Beretta would just run in and risk his own life. But it's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
It's not like that. And we need to face that. And a teacher should have a choice. Those are her babies, man. And she's watching her babies get shot. And it took an hour. So he slowly picked them off one by one. And the kids who survived are telling the stories. So we're in a different age, bro. People should have the choice. The principals and teachers should have the right if they want. And they should have training. But the bottom line is, here's the nice part. The kids won't know which teachers are armed. So it makes it far less likely a shooter will go there, because they pick on places where they know nobody's going to show up. And one thing, China has even more school killings than we have. Look it up. Serpensa, he has a YouTube channel. He's the #1 blogger in China. His name is Serpensa. And there are more school killings in China than here. And it's because they're enraged. Yeah, look it up on YouTube. His name is Serpensa. And they have a lot of school killings because in our a lot of their society's problems, they take it out on the kids in school, and they have massive, massive killings in their school. Anyway, man, thanks for letting me call in, and I enjoy the show, and it's great, man. Keep it up.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Appreciate it. I'll most certainly have to look into this. Let's. We got time for one more. We can get Guy in from New York. G, how are you, man?
Hello. How you doing?
I'm good. Okay. What's on your mind? You got about a minute and a half.
Okay. So I just want to ask a question. What are some of the differences between Republicans and Democrats? I look it up and I just see very basic stuff. But I listen to you. You seem to be very knowledgeable, and you seem to be a Democrat. So what's some of the differences that you look at?
For me personally, at the end of the day, it comes back to what my high school government teacher said. At the end of the day, it comes down to Republicans are going to push for the very wealthy and the very powerful. Democrats are going to push for the very poor and social programs to help those. You got to decide which way you're going to lean towards. That's the basic premise. I look at the policies Republicans have pushed over the years. It's all about the wealthy and the entrenched power, corporate America, tax cuts for the rich, deregulation. Democrats, I want to believe they've disappointed me repeatedly over the years, and they haven't been the party of the working class like I want them to be, which is why I push so hard to make sure that they are and push them to try and be. But for me, that's kind of where I'm at. I believe in working class values, the right to organize, the right to collective bargaining, and a sane, rational tax code. That's my hope. But that's the best I can do in 30 seconds.
I'll continue to listen to you and see what else.
All right. Try back next week. I got to go. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Please tune in again. If you missed any of today's program, make sure you download the podcast. Never miss a moment. You can get that at thericksmithshow.com. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. You got thoughts, questions, comments? I do answer all emails personally. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.